And so we're going to talk about this book. We wanted to make sure that everybody got a copy of this because it's not only something that you can read and enjoy, but there's incredible learning from this book. And so Chip, thank you and welcome. The beginning of this book, and if you all have it here, you have this beautiful quote from Jim Collins. It's from Good to Great. And what does this quote mean to you?
It's more like to give my life meaning, to actually be in a creative mode and to make something in life. Like actually to be on my deathbed and going, oh, I actually did contribute. I actually made a difference in the world somehow. And I think that's a life worth living.
I want to talk about what happened before. You were an athlete. You were a swimmer.
Yeah.
You came and tell me about those days of swimming and how that sort of sprung some ideas about what people should be wearing, clothing.
Sure. Well, one, we didn't have any money, so the reason I got into swimming because all it cost was a Speedo and there wasn't even any goggles back then. You just suffered through the chlorine, so it was pretty easy on my parents. And so being a competitive swimmer, of course, is the first kind of foray into Lycra tight clothing, and so I lived most of till I was probably 25 as going through university and swimming and everything. So I noticed that girls had, the straps and the 10,000 strokes you do a day and just the rashing, and they were always complaining about swimsuits. And so that, I think that was always in the background of my mind. Plus my mom was a sewer, so in order to be with my mom, I had to, sit at the sewing machine, and I learned how to do that and cut patterns and everything else. And so it started to give me an impetus as to ideas.
I want to talk about your first yoga class.
I always had this thing as an entrepreneur, and maybe everyone has their different things, but my thing is when I see three things really quickly, I move on it, and I move really quickly. I was in a coffee shop and I heard two women talk about yoga. And then the next morning I was reading the paper and I saw an article on yoga. And then I'm walking down the street and there's a telephone post and it has those rip-off things about a yoga class. I've never seen a yoga class before. So I did, and I went to the yoga class. But the interesting thing about it, of course, is I'm looking at the clothing as I always would do, and I found it very unfunctional, very baggy. And of course the teachers couldn't really align any of us their posture because the clothing was very baggy and it didn't really make sense. Plus it was sweaty and the cotton stuff didn't work and blah, blah, blah. But really it was like waiting 30 days that it ended up being like about 30 people in the class. And so I extrapolated out the same way I did in surf skate snowboarding and went, this is going to be really big. If you really look at fashion from the last 20 years, you'll see how much influence Lululemon has had, because suddenly we were using the seams to actually accentuate bodies. Almost every great idea is because you got to figure something out. A problem exists. I think we have to have such incredible faith in who we are and our ability to spot whatever is of interest, because we wouldn't even be looking for those three things unless there was some passion about it, some reason we're reading it. And when you put all those things together, it's almost impossible somebody else has got the same thing at the same time from the same perspective. So I think when you see three things, you have to go for it.
Appreciate your time and thank you so much again.